Good evening, everyone. Hey, I'm just new to the industry. A little warmer welcome than that? Thank you. And I don't know shit about the industry, so you can all help me over the course of the next couple of days. I'm here to talk to you tonight about you as a leader in your company or on your team or whatever your role is at the organization that you work for. Because in my experience, regardless of the industry, leaders really have one big thing that everyone in this room shares. A lot of responsibilities, a lot of things you have to do every day. But for me, the biggest thing of a leader is to make sure that the company or your organization is as successful in the future as you have been in the past. It's really that simple. There's not a lot of people that come to work in your organization every day that are thinking about 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 years from now, and what do we have to do to prepare for that time? But you do. And if you look at the world that we live in today, at times that can be pretty daunting. You think about the economy and how fragile it is. I mean, we could be on the verge of another 2008 with the coronavirus. If you think what's happening in Asia right now, and Yum has so many restaurants in China, it's frightening as the impact that we could have, and it's happened really in the last couple of weeks. It just happens really quickly. A lot of pressure on leaders. Think about regulation. I mean, I come from Gulf. We had a lot of regulation. This industry really has no regulation. But think about it. Thank you for getting that joke. I know it's late on a Sunday night. Thank you. But we live in an over-regulated world. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's true. And just as you, as a leader, prepare how you're going to go forward and regulation changes, puts a lot of pressure on you to make those decisions. You think about technology. Technology is certainly changing this industry. And just in the last few years, how delivery is changing. And all of the back of restaurant technologies that makes it more efficient to run restaurants. Technology is really, think about enterprise technologies and systems. I mean, a lot of pressure to make the right choice, to bring in the right technologies. Customers, think about how fast customer behaviors are changing today, faster than ever before. Employees, how difficult is it to manage aging baby boomers like me leaving, millennials taking over. I know it's a frightening thought, but it's happening, and it's all good, right? But it's different. Those aren't necessarily new things, but what's new about the world we live in today is the speed at which it's changing. It's not evolving, it's changing. And it's changing so rapidly that a lot of things that have worked in businesses before aren't going to work in the future. And that's really a challenge I've been around for 40 years, selling consumer products for 40 years. What worked 40 years ago certainly isn't going to work today. There's a book, it's been out now 4 or 5 years, it's my favorite book. I don't really read a lot of business books, but it's fabulous. The name of the book is What Matters Now. You should read the book, What Matters Now. It's written by Gary Hamel, who's one of the big thinkers on business today. And really the book talks about what the title is. It's just what matters now. And what used to matter, a lot of it still does, but there's a lot of new things that matter in how you should lead and run companies today. But the most interesting part of the book for me is he talks about 3 marketplace revolutions that in the past 130 or 40 years, there's only been 3 times when the market has completely transformed itself within a 20-year period. The first was the Industrial Revolution, from about 1890 to about 1910 or 1920, when the Industrial Revolution exploded, the world changed. Mass production of goods, economy exploded around the world, and the world was never the same again. And it didn't happen in a 30 or 40-year period, it happened in about a 20-year period. Hamel argues that right after World War II, there was this thirst for knowledge, and that industries and leaders and organizations thought that the more knowledge they could have, the better decisions they could make. And from there was born computing. And that changed our world back then, and it continues to change our world today. Well, he argues that right now, and this was a couple of years ago, so we're right in the middle of it. We're in the middle of the 3rd marketplace revolution. And that is this, that industries, organizations, and leaders if they don't drive creativity into the way they think and operate every day, they won't be able to succeed mid and long term. And it's exactly what Michael just said about disruption. And creativity in his mind are new and different ways of doing things, better, cheaper, faster. And we live not in a world of predictability and control, we live in a world of disruption and speed. And yet most organizations, Taco Bell would be one of those, is not really prepared to deal with fast pace of change because we have a model that we operate today. And it works great. But if you listen to Hamill, all of the models that work today probably aren't going to work in the near future. Doesn't mean it's the next 1 or 2 years, but it's coming faster than ever before. And so how do we prepare ourselves? How do we change the way we think and behave to be successful in this new world? And the new world is upon us. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight, is my journey over the last 20 years and what I learned being a part of two companies. So a little bit on me. I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Any Packer fans? Really? The booze? Anyway, I was born in Green Bay. I'm still a Packer fan. My first job right out of college was working for the TaylorMade Golf Company, 1981. Any golfers in here? There we go. Any TaylorMade golfers in here? The booze! Love it. I just got my first set of Callaway irons. I played them today, so don't tell TaylorMade. Anyway, I worked at TaylorMade from 1981 to 1999, all in the sales department. And in 1999, Adidas bought the company, and they fired the CEO, and they looked around the organization and the industry for somebody to lead this flailing company because it was struggling by 1999. Callaway was doing fantastic, Titleist, a couple other competitors. Couldn't find anybody, so they gave the job to the unsuccessful sales guy. That was me. So in about 2000, I get the job to run the company. I ran the company for about 13 years. And during that time, as Michael said, our business went from $300 million to almost $2 billion. But the most thank you. But the most interesting thing about that success was that the industry actually contracted by 20% during that 13-year period. So as you looked at the title of the talk tonight, it's Create Your Own Future. Can you create your own future? And I really believe that experience in my life just said, hey, if you do things differently, if you think about things in a new way, if you create a new lens to look at the marketplace, you can create your own future. You don't have to follow market trends and industry trends and the stock market. You don't have to. I mean, when I took this job at Taco Bell, everybody said, oh, QSR is going down. Well, not everybody's going down. Some are going down, some are going up. You just happen to, hopefully you're on the one that's going up. And I think that's the target, that's the goal for all leaders, is how do you look at your industry, how do you look at your job, how do you look at your organization, and make sure you do the things that get you going in the right direction. In 2014, Adidas asked me to go to Portland and run the Adidas business in North America. Now, the Adidas business in North America in 2014 had been flat for almost 20 years. Flat for 20 years, and we target kids from 14 to 24 years old. We had the lowest market share of any major brand in the world in that segment in 2014. Nike was hot, Under Armour was hot, a lot of the other brands, Puma, a lot of small brands, Vans, rocking. Adidas completely, just really not in a very good place. That was middle of 2014. We did $1.7 billion that year. 2018, we did $5.2 billion. In a market, I'll talk about that. In a market that was growing 2 to 3% a year. We had 30% a year growth for 4 straight years. So what I've learned in my time is that you can create a different future other than what you have today. But it does require different things, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to talk about 5 things, and they're not very technical. And I certainly get that to run a company, all things have to hit. You have to have great products. You have to have great supply chain and marketing and store operations and understand the consumer. I understand all that. But to me, there's 5 things that changed the trajectory of the businesses that I was a part of. So the first one, you actually have to believe as a leader that your business is going to be disrupted. You actually have to believe that. If you don't believe that, the rest, you can actually go and start drinking now, because the rest of what I'm going to say isn't going to make any sense to you. But if you believe that the industry that you work in, the company that you work in, the competitors that you compete against, if you believe, and you have to believe that it's going to be disrupted, and not in 10 years, probably a lot sooner than that. In 2005, this writer for Fortune identified 10 industries and the leaders of each one of those industries. 2005. 2015, he wrote the article about the 10 industries that he tracked for 10 years and the 10 leaders that were leading in 2005. And you know how many were leading those industries in 2015? None. They weren't even close to leading those industries. Now, they weren't big, mature industries, but the point is the world is different today than it was 30 or 40 years ago, where if you were a market share leader, you probably held on to that for a long time, and it was very hard to disrupt the leader. Today, it's easy to disrupt the leader because the leaders have these big infrastructures. They have a lot of people that have been there for 20 years. They have the same mindset. They're stuck in the same way. They have a lot to risk if they're going to be disruptive and try something new and different. And so what happens is somebody else does it, not with money or resources, but with new creative ideas. So fundamental one is you got to believe it's going to happen, because it is going to happen. Second thing, this idea of aspiration, a big dream, something that you can't really get your arms around. Like 1960, JFK said, we're going to put a man on the moon in this decade. And 10 years later, less than a decade later, we had people walking on the moon. That's what I'm talking about, big aspiration. Not necessarily a path to understand how to get there, but a big dream. So I want to tell you what I think changed the trajectory of the 2 companies that I was with, both TaylorMade and Adidas. 2 things happened. A lot of things happened after that. But it was these 2 moments that I think changed everything. I got my job running the company, and in the fall of 1999, I went off-site for my first executive off-site as the leader of the company. And I said, hey guys, we have a failing company. Germans are the owners now. We have a failing company. Sales have been declining for 7 or 8 years. We're losing money. If we don't do better in the next couple of years, they're going to sell us. Does anyone have an idea? So the CFO, his name was Howard Allred, raised his hand and he said, hey, I got a great idea. Why don't we try to raise revenue and decrease cost? Seriously? And I, honest to God, I looked at him and I thought, this job's not going to be as hard as I thought it was going to be. And then we had a new guy. It's always the new guy. He was a lawyer, Robert Erb, raised his hand. He goes, hey, I understand we probably have to raise revenue and cut expenses, but we should have a bigger aspiration than that. We're the leaders of the company, although it's not a great company. But, I mean, if we don't have a bigger aspiration than that, why is anyone going to want to work here? And I said, well, what do you have in mind, Robert? He said, why don't we try to become the best performance golf brand in the world? And I said, Robert, because Callaway is the best performance golf brand in the world. Everybody knows that. He said, no, it doesn't make any difference what your competitors are doing. It doesn't really even make any difference if we actually get there. But we should be aspiring to be the best we can be. We should aspire to make the best equipment that anybody could ever make, that everyone would want to play. We should try to have the best environment where everybody in golf wants to work at our company. That's what we should be trying to do. So the 10 of us argued about it for the next 4 or 5 hours. So you can imagine half the people wanted, or a third of them wanted to do what Howard wanted to do, a third were in the middle, and a third were over here. So at 4 o'clock, as the leader of the group, I said, I think we should break and go to the bar. So we did, which you all are going to do in about 30 minutes. And we got up the next morning, and through the fog of red wine, our future was clear. Of course we should try to do something great and extraordinary. So we were so excited, ran back to the office, Carlsbad, California, Got everybody together in the cafeteria, said, we have great news for you. We're going to be the best performance golf brand in the world. People were worried about getting laid off. We're going to be the best performance golf brand in the world. We're going to be so great. Everyone's going to play our clubs, and you guys are going to love working here. Of course, there's a guy in the front. It's always a guy in the front. How are we going to do that? I looked over at Robert Irby, goes, no idea. And we didn't have any idea. But I'll tell you what happened that day. When you pick this, and you have to believe in it, but when you put something out there that's really, that you can't touch, that you can't rationalize, that you can't justify, it's just something that brings you to work every day. It excites the people that work at your company, I promise you. Your employees want to be part of something that's special. Even if you don't get there, at least you're on that journey. And that day, all things changed at TaylorMade. And from that point, I think we started to make decisions. Well, if we're going to do this great thing, we would have to do things differently. Okay. Because if you're going to change the trajectory, you have to do things differently. Well, if you're only going to try to raise revenue a little bit and cut expenses, you don't really have to do anything differently. When I went to Adidas, the company, same thing, not doing very well. I thought I would try it out. I didn't talk to anybody about it. My first day on the job, get everybody together in the gymnasium. Now, this brand has been flat for 20 years. I got up in front of everyone. I said, hey, I have a dream. I told the story about the 10 companies in the 10 years. And then I said, I have a dream. I have a dream that this group of people, if we could come together and share a big vision, we could do extraordinary things. And that vision for me is we're going to become the face of sport in America. Not Nike, not Under Armour, not the Cowboys, not the Yankees, not the Packers, but Adidas. A German soccer brand is going to become the face of sport in America. And I told everyone that would listen, and no one believed. Even the people in Germany didn't believe. And that day, things started to change. People started to have different discussions. People got excited about coming into work. And from there, a lot of great things were born. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those. But I think if you're going to be disruptive, if you're going to foster new and creative ideas, you have to have a North Star. You have to have something that's big. Not something that you can attain, but something that gets people to think. Because here's where I think creativity comes from in organizations. I think it's the difference between aspiration and resource. The bigger the aspiration with the lower resources to get there, the less resources, that gap is filled by creativity. And if you believe Hamill that creativity is the secret to the future, new creative ideas, better, faster, cheaper, in a disruptive way, you have the path forward. And if you think about where disruption comes from, in most industries, it comes from outside people that don't have institutional knowledge, that don't have legacy systems, that don't have knowledge, wisdom, and experience. They have a big aspiration, low resources, and a bunch of creative ideas. That's where disruption comes from. How do you build that into your organization? And it was powerful what happened and what the feeling was. So creativity. The third idea, you have to be looking for disruption. And to me, this is the most challenging one. Because when you go back to your offices on Wednesday or Thursday, you have your list of things you have to do and your meetings, and you have to deliver the numbers for this year, and all the things that we have to do as leaders or managers, they just really stack up. And how do you look for new ideas? Well, you have to, and I'll get to how to do it in a second, but let me tell you what things we found at both TaylorMade and Adidas that changed the direction. And this is the disruption that Michael was talking about. So we have this offsite, and we get this big aspiration about changing golf and becoming the best performance golf brand. So we had a new product. And if you're a golfer, there's 6 different categories. There's metal woods, irons, there's putters, balls, footwear, and apparel. 6 categories. And in the golf industry, metal woods is the biggest category. And TaylorMade was founded in 1980, creating this new metal wood, and it really changed the industry. So we said we have to reclaim leadership in the metal wood category. Well, in 2000, Callaway had 35% market share and we had 10. So we said we're going to set out on this journey to overtake Callaway, 35-10, billion-dollar company, 300, making hundreds of millions, losing. So we brought a new product out, put a lot of marketing behind it, got the sales force interested in it, got them all excited about it, went out, executed a flawless plan exactly the way the industry would tell you to do it. The end of 2000, Callaway had 35, we had 10. So we got together and we said, okay, that ain't gonna work. We have to do something completely different. So we didn't look within the industry, we actually looked outside the industry. And we looked at the electronics industry, we looked at the technology industry. They were launching products like all the time, like 3-4 times a year. They would come out with new TV sets, they would come out with new handhelds, all these different technologies. In our industry, life cycles are 3 to 5 years. So we said, why don't we just reinvent the entire model? And instead of launching a product and having a full year to get it distributed and then do the marketing, and then by year 3 people start to buy it, and year 4 it tails off, and year 5 it goes away, why don't we just go to 1-year life cycles, just the way all these other technology industries do. And not only are we going to go to, but we're going to launch at a higher price, and every year when we launch a new one, we're going to lower the price of that one. So we started it in 2001, launched a product at $500. 2002, we lowered that to $400, launched another one at $500. The next year, we launched another one at $500, moved that to $400, moved that to $300. The industry thought we had completely lost our mind. We weren't going to be able to make money, we were flooding the marketplace, salesmen had to sell differently, retailers had to buy differently, marketers had to market differently. And by 2004, we had 21% market share. Callaway had 20, 3 years. 2001, 2, 3, 3 years, 2003. 2004, we launched a new product called the R7, different technology. So you have technology and a new model. We went to 35% market share. Callaway went to 15. We were there for almost 8 years, 9 years. In 4 years, we took the leader of the market. At that time, Callaway and equipment was $1 billion. We were $300 million, and we were the second place market share as an equipment company. They were so dominant, you couldn't imagine Callaway not being where they are. And yet, 36 months later, they were no longer the leader in the biggest category. And then over the course of the next 4, 5, 6 years, that started to go into every product category. So we disrupted the model. News for you. The United States Golf Association regulates the distance a driver can hit a golf ball. So for 34 years, I was lying to all of you. Ours didn't go further than anyone else's. So my point is, the performance of every driver at the top level is exactly the same. Yet we were able to shift market share, not because of a product, not because of a story, but because of understanding the customer, how he or she wanted to buy, and they didn't want to buy every 3 years. They wanted to buy every year. So the core golfer, the passionate golfer, they didn't want to buy every 3 or 4 years. They wanted to buy every year. And then we found these price points that nobody ever thought about before, became ours, not second and third tier brands. Changed the model, changed the industry. When I went to Adidas, do you know how you market footwear and apparel in the athletic space? Through athletes. Nike's the best at it. They have Michael Jordan. They had Kobe Bryant. They had LeBron James. They have everybody. Anybody that's the best in sport, Nike has them. So in 2014, we said, well, we have some athletes, but nobody knows them. We have RG3. He was our only NFL football player. And he broke his leg or whatever he did, and he never came back. So probably wasn't going to change the direction of the company re-signing RG3, although we still have him under contract. So we decided to do something completely radical. It's not today, but I can tell you, in 2014, it was pretty radical. We signed a deal with Kanye West, who was Had done some collaborations with Nike. It didn't work, but it didn't work because they didn't want to do it the way Kanye West wanted to do it. And Kanye West wanted to have his own design group, design his own products, sell them under the Adidas company, but not put the Adidas logo on the pair of shoes. Think about that. We're going to now market a pair of shoes under the Adidas company without the Adidas logo on them. Any marketer would be fired for that suggestion. Seriously, they would be fired. Launched them in early part of 2015. Within 4 years, it was a $1 billion franchise. It completely changed the perception of a German soccer brand into one of the coolest brands for that time period that you could imagine. And it happened overnight. Happened overnight. You couldn't give an 18-year-old kid a pair of Adidas in 2014. It's a little cooler now than it was. I mean, it's cooled down a little bit. But for that period, from 15 to 19, Adidas was the hottest product because of doing something different. It wasn't using athletes. We had all kinds of it. And then we started to sign athletes, but it wasn't the athletes. And now they do collaborations with Pharrell and Katy Perry. And now it's about influencers as much as it is athletes. So if you want to change your business, you have to find that kind of disruption. I worked with a guy, and he had this saying, and I think it's really, really relevant for all of you. Don't innovate to compete. Innovate to change the rules of the game. And you have to be looking for that kind of innovation. You have to be looking for that. Not to just do a little bit better, but to change the rules of the game. Because the rules of the game, I'll go back to the very first point. If you believe the rules of the game are going to change, it better be you that does it. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble. Anyone's going to be. Or you're going to be following, or it's going to affect you. So how do you find these ideas? I think it's the biggest question. How do you find new disruptive ideas? So here's what probably doesn't work. Going on an offsite with the executive team. Same 10 people have been hanging out together for 15 years. Do a lot of weddings together, do a lot of family trips, play golf together, send out holiday cards. We got to go on an offsite. We need some new creative ideas. We need to think out of the box. So you go on the offsite, got the same 10 executives, got the agenda that you've had for 5 years, and on one segment it's think out of the box, find new creative ideas. It never works. Okay, the other one that people do is, hey, let's hire some kids that have long hair and look like they're homeless, get an off-site location, and let them drift around the country and find new creative ideas. A lot of companies do that one. It's better than the first one, but probably not that effective. I met a guy in 2005. His name was John Hamm. He was my coach when I was the CEO of the TaylorMade company. In 2005, he said to me, look, there's the only model of leadership is really command and control. Leader sits up on top, he tells people what to do, everybody waits. He's got the big personality, everybody waits for directions, they go execute, command and control. He said to me 15 years ago, the leaders in the new world will not be command and control leaders, they'll be distributed leaders. They'll distribute the leadership. I said, what does that mean? He said, leaders of the future, we're now in the future, their job is to create an environment where every employee takes responsibility for the future. So leaders in today's world are not just command and control leaders, but they distribute the leadership. They engage every employee that wants to think about creating the future for the company. So I went on that journey. 2010, I met Gary Hamel. I listened to him speak. I went up and I asked him to come into TaylorMade and help me create this environment by engaging people. And that really drove the business from about 2005-06 when I met John Hamm, then brought in Gary Hamel, and it really changed the industry forever. When I left, we were almost $2 billion. When I got to Adidas, my first phone call I made was to Gary Hamel. I said, Gary, I need you here more than at TaylorMade because this place, nobody wants to work here. We have really no future. So he came in, he gave a wonderful speech to the company, and he said this. He said, Mark King has spent all of his life selling golf clubs. He doesn't know anything about footwear and apparel. And the only way we're going to go forward is if every one of you take part in helping us create the future. He said, we're going to be launching something called the Innovation Academy in about 60 days. So between now and then, I want all of you to think about an idea, a business idea that would make Adidas a better company. And I'm going to come back in 60 days. I'm going to have this 8-session module that will take your business idea, and in 8 weeks, we'll give you a business plan. Capital required, return on investment, resources needed, and I'm going to take you through this. So he went away and he made this online learning class called the Innovation Academy, 8 modules, 1 hour apiece. 3,000 people voluntarily started the program. 1 hour every Wednesday afternoon for 8 straight weeks, 2 hours, whatever it was. At the end of the 8 weeks, 1,000 people had, and it was a pretty intense program, 1,000 people had created business plans for ideas to make Adidas a better company. Now, before you get carried away, they weren't all brilliant. Like the one we implemented immediately was free beer on Thursday afternoon from 4 to 6. So they weren't all breakthrough, but they were amazing. Then we had a big Shark Tank and we whittled them down and somebody won the best idea and we funded it. But let me tell you what happened. And this is what really happened at Adidas. This is what happened in a 5-year period that would be unheard of in just about anywhere you would go. One, we got people to think about the company that they work for in a different way than they ever did before. So if you could take your workplace and get people to not just do their jobs, but do their jobs and think about creating a future or creating better ideas and have a way and a platform to bring that forward and execute it, pretty amazing. Morale changed like amazingly over a short period of time. Secondly, we had 1,000 business ideas. Let's be honest, we probably had 100. But we had 100 legitimate ideas that, as of today, probably implemented almost every one of those. Almost every major idea that changed the business at Adidas came from that Innovation Academy. It still lives today. And so I think the way to find these disruptive ideas is to unleash the power of your organization. You don't need Gary Hamel. You don't need a bunch of fancy software. You just need an environment like John Hamm told me. Create an environment that says to people, I need your help. We need your help to create disruption going forward. Look, and it's not only disruption. You have to run the model that you have today. But while you're running the model today, while you're improving year on year, you've got to have a mechanism to go out and find this disruption. And I believe the best way is not the offsite with the executive team, not the 4 kids roaming the streets looking for new creative ideas. It's unleashing the potential of your own organization. That, to me, is the most powerful. The last idea is this idea of experimentation. Because as you're running your model, at some point you have to try something. And you have to commit to experimentation, because if you don't, you'll never get there. So far I've talked about things that worked when 2 businesses were really struggling. Well, in 2010, TaylorMade was rocking. We were about $1.2 billion in 2010, number 1 in the industry, past Callaway. Callaway had shrunk to $800 million. We were $1.2 billion. And every Friday, the 6 category managers had a meeting, and they would present to the executive team the update on the new products that were going to be launched. And we were about in the middle of 2010. So the guy that ran our metalwood business, which now we have 35% metalwood share, Callaway has 15. His name is Mike Ferris. He's presenting the new cosmetics for the driver for 2011. Now, what happens to companies when they get leadership? They get very conservative because they have a lot to lose. So in golf in 2010, the driver head on every single competitor in golf was painted black. And you know why? Because marketers thought that the only color that a real golfer would buy was black. This may sound trivial, but in our industry, that was a big deal. So, now, picture up here 3 different colors for 2011. Light black, medium black, and dark black. And Mike is saying, you know, we were at light black this year, so I think going to dark black would be a little aggressive, so I'm proposing we go to medium black. And we're all like, it's a pretty good idea, Mike. It's pretty good. So, there's a guy in the room who runs the putter business. His name is Billy Price. Now, if you run the putter business at TaylorMade in 2010, you're one of 2 things. You're either really old and we don't know what to do with you, or you're on probation and you're almost out the door. It's not a high-profile job. So Billy says, hey, last year, we were really struggling selling putters, so we painted them white, and we called it the Ghost Putter, and our market share went from 7 to 15%. Why don't we paint the driver white? And I looked at him and I said, Billy, there's a reason you're running putters. Just stay down. Stay down, Billy. Anyway, next Friday we come in, we're all ready to agree on medium black. Billy pulls out the driver from his coat and he says, hey, I painted one white. You should take a look at it. So, of course, it passes around the room and the comments go, oh, my God, that's amazing. Oh, my God, the guy that has 9 black drivers in his garage, he's going to buy this just because it's a different color. Duh. Nobody thought about that, seriously. So then we said, well, we should show this to some golfers. So we fixed them up, got one with the shaft on it. We went out to PGA Tour. Does anyone know who Retief Goosen is? TaylorMade guy forever. And he was 2-time U.S. Open champion. Swear to God, I was with him. He takes this white driver and he starts swinging. And he goes, oh, my God, Mark, is this a technical white paint? And I said, Retief, you're the first one that figured that out. How did you know? He goes, well, when you swing, you can see the white and you can track the club. This is amazing. Hello. So anyway, we showed it to our retail customers. We showed it to other golfers. We made the decision in the fall that in January of 2011, we would launch our first white driver. We launched it by March. Our market share was 52%. 35 to 52 by painting it a different color. But it wasn't just the color. It was the industry said, you can't do this. And it took somebody, and now think about what would have happened had Callaway launched a white driver and we would have stuck with black. It would have gone 15, it would have gone 35, 15, and it would have gone just the other way. Because customers are waiting for something new and different and exciting. That's why QSR, oh, it's slipping. I don't think so. Look at Popeyes. Is anyone in here from Popeyes? I mean, I hate to say it, but I love that damn sandwich. But I mean, think of what they did overnight with one sandwich and the way they marketed it and brought it to, I mean, totally disruptive for their business. And things happen, and they don't happen over a long period of time. They happen almost overnight because you understand the customer, you're willing to experiment, you're willing to disrupt your own business. So let me leave you with this. I think it's an unbelievable time to be in business today. I do. Because the world is in a revolution, as Hamill would say. It's changing rapidly. And most people can only do what they do because they're afraid to do something different and new and to have to learn all over again. And they're afraid to engage the employee base, to have ideas so that they can blow up the ideas that we, the executive team, created and listen to the general population where there's much brighter and more fertile minds that are thinking about how we can go forward. So all I would say to you is this. It's going to be disrupted. You can be the disruptor, but you got to think about it. You got to have a big aspiration. You have to engage your people. And I think the biggest thing is fortune favors the bold, and you got to have enough courage to be bold. Thank you. Have a great week, and I'm sure I'll meet some of you around. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. Can I ask you one question? What do you think is going to be the biggest disruption in your business in the next 5-10 years in Taco Bell?
Well, I think delivery has to be. Even though right now our ticket is so small, delivery doesn't really benefit, but I think delivery has to be. 70% of our business is at drive-through right now. I don't know if that continues, but if it does, the drive-through experience at Taco Bell is totally antiquated. It's no different than it was before. It's still fine. We're at 4 minutes as a system on drive-through, but I think drive-through is a problem for us. I think customer experience inside the restaurant is a challenge for us. Like Chick-fil-A, I know there's a few Chick-fil-A people here. That's an amazing drive-through and in-restaurant experience. I think this plant-based protein is going to be, even though there's a lot of, it's going to work, it's not going to work, I think it's going to have a place on the menu. I think there's so many opportunities to disrupt. Somebody's got to get there first, and they got to do it the best.
That's just the one question I want to ask you.
All right, buddy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, man. Real pleasure having you with us.